Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take you behind the curtain for just a minute. Not the polished version, not the highlight reel, but the real conversations that happen between recordings, where creators start talking about the craft, the tools, the time, the philosophy, and where we draw the line with things like AI. Because whether you're building a podcast, writing a book, or just telling your story, there's a difference between using tools and losing your voice. This was one of those conversations, and it definitely turned into something worth sharing. Hey there, fellow wanderers, and welcome back to the Wandering Gypsy RV Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stan Cromlish, author of the Rolling Smooth RV book series, coming to you from somewhere out on the open road with my trusty companions, Birdie B and Rosie. This podcast is where the RV lifestyle meets real stories from the road, the lessons learned along the way, and conversations with people who live this life in their very own unique ways. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's see where the road takes us today. So let's get back to the story we were telling about behind the scenes. I just recently started using Riverside for podcast recordings because of their quality AI products that pick out those YouTube shorts and the hooks. If I wanted to, Riverside has a service that would upload you directly to the podcast channels.
Yeah.
So do you use ChatGPT and other AI chat functions to figure out your show notes or talking points?
Yeah, I do use ChatGPT quite a lot. Not done anything AI. Even Descript has AI functions. In other words, I don't have it record my voice and have it go, everything that the listener hears has been recorded.
Right.
Okay.
Same
So
for me.
no AI enhancements anywhere. That's a line I'm unwilling to cross, So what you hear is the same as you've been sitting there during the recording.
Same for me. I've not crossed over into letting Descript or Riverside or other AI that could do. Everybody's seen the deep fakes and everybody's seen all of the AI videos now that are on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Do you do TikTok, Doug?
No.
I don't either.
No, I don't. I do Instagram. I have Instagram and YouTube, and then of course Facebook. Main way of getting the word out is Facebook.
Yes.
I don't do any advertising. I'm a little old fashioned, I guess, kind of running what I call the country western model.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the old days, Charlie Pride would record an album, put it out, and then he'd go on the road and he'd be at radio shows and he'd be putting on concerts. And that's how, whether that's fairs or wherever that is, promoting his music. So that's what brings me here to Kickback.
Mm-hmm.
On occasion, I'll record at a rodeo reunion.
Yes.
And while that's fun, it's hard to get to everybody and see everybody and meet everybody, at a reunion.
Yes.
So if you're trying to record or whatever, there's some challenges there. So that's one of the ways that we get the word of the show out.
Right.
Right. And we're hearing, more and more people we come in contact with, they listen, they have listened to the show, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always encouraging.
It is. So Like I said, I use DaVinci Resolve to edit the videos that I'm doing. What do you use to edit your videos?
Right now, and I'm just getting into it, and I'm doing relatively small videos. I'm doing, 20 minutes or less. And I use Descript just because I'm familiar with it.
You're comfortable with it.
I'm comfortable with it. And it can be so labor intensive to learn a new software. Now, if we were to go further into the video and we start to get bigger files and that sort of thing, or like you, where you're shooting with 3 cameras or 4 cameras or whatever you're doing, that would, and some of the numbers and hours I'm hearing that you're editing for a 1-hour show
it's a 6 to 8 hour process post-recording. It's a 6 to 8 hour process to edit a 1-hour video.
And my rule of thumb typically with audio, if, given the sound and everything is good, and that's the number one thing I start with. If we don't sound good on the microphones, if we don't sound good to the listener, it doesn't matter how good your guests are. It doesn't matter how good the content is.
No.
If they can't hear you or understand you,
right.
They got to struggle because there's background noise or whatever it is.
Or you've recorded it at too low a volume.
Yeah.
Or in the case of the video I did 3 weeks ago with Bill and Laura Eglin, I had a mic on my right here like this one, like this DJI mic, and it was turned up too loud for the input, and it was clipping and cranky and broken up.
Yeah.
So you've really got to be careful with your audio levels.
You have to be very careful, and clarity and the right microphone and something like bleed over like we talked about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that can come in and really mess you up. HVAC in the background, air conditioning in the background, whatever it may be. So really spending the time and the effort on good quality sound while we're doing it.
Yes.
And that's why I have primarily stayed with audio. So if I have a good recording, and thank goodness I do, just about every time, there's been some gaffes, some mistakes I've made, right? That I didn't have mic set up right or whatever the case may be, and have had to redo segments because I screwed up in the equipment setup.
Right.
If I can get and a lot of our shows are upwards of 2 hours that we do.
Mm-hmm.
2 hours, and I listen to every word on edit.
Yep.
Every single word on edit. And I can usually get, from the time I upload that audio and can begin to work, it's probably, 2 hours will cost me 5 hours.
Right.
Of edit time. And then you still go through distribution, and you still go through your notes and your descriptions. And like you, I do use ChatGPT for that.
Yes.
It helps to formalize. And what a lot of people don't understand maybe about ChatGPT, it's no different than talking to an assistant. You say, okay, here's the transcription, the transcription to it. Give me what you think would be the summary. Give me what you think we should talk about specifically in our description. And you can interact and say a little more of this, a little less of that.
Yeah.
Do that. So it's still your words. It's just a way of pulling it all together in a way that hopefully you don't want anything. It's kind of like you're writing. You don't want to get in. You don't want the tone or the rhythm of the written word to get in the way of the content.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I have a particular writing style, and in my books that I wrote, I would, and this is the good thing about ChatGPT or Claude or any of the AI chat products. I write my chapter and then I ask ChatGPT to edit for clarity.
Yeah.
But when I ask it to edit for clarity, I also tell it, do not change my writing style.
Right.
Because AI has a bad habit of, if you don't tell it do not, it will change your writing style to sound like Ernest Hemingway or, or Edgar Allan Poe. It will change your writing style to where you don't even recognize that it's yours.
Yeah.
And that is, there are questions out there. I'm friends with some musicians, and now you can use AI to create you write the song and then you have AI put it to music. And I read recently that a #1 song on the Billboard country chart wasn't even sung by a human. It was written by a human and sung by AI.
Really?
Yes.
I hadn't heard that. Yeah. Wow.
And to me, we've got to be careful with AI.
We do. I would agree with that. Yeah. So are you using AI for doing research before a podcast or anything like that?
I do a little bit of my own research, but then I put my research into AI and say, do I have these talking points right based on this research? And then AI comes back and says, that whatever isn't quite true. Here is an excerpt from this website talking about this, and you're all in what your line of thinking was for that. Or it says, yes, you're spot on with your research and your talking points.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do the same thing. I will use it. There's a feature called Deep Research.
Right.
And I will use that if I'm going to be sitting down with a guest in a week or whatever. I will use that to go in and do what would take me a day or a day and a half to do, even using Google.
Right.
Because even with Google, you got to know which roads to go down.
Yeah.
Something.
And there's no road maps at times.
And there isn't. So meaning, do I need to build out this, or do I need to go do more research on this particular segment that I just pulled up?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a Wikipedia almost.
Right.
I want to learn about that town that this guy talks about. I can click on it, take me there.
Right.
With Google, you've got to make all those connections yourself. With AI, it'll start to pull all that stuff together. But depending on who I have on the show, I may say, go check out all the archives, articles, rodeo news, IRA website, the interviews, podcasts, stories, anything you can find where this person may have been. I want to go in with as much knowledge as I possibly can about this person. That the big things. So he's 4-time world champion. I don't want to learn that from him in an interview.
You want to know that going in.
Yeah. So, if I'm going to do a 2-hour show, there's probably 2-3 hours of prep. We'll go into it, and research, and ChatGPT definitely helps with that research. Now, what I do, and I insist on this with AI, is as you're doing the research, I want you to tell me where this came from.
Right.
What was your source for this paragraph you just gave me? And what was interesting, this was about 6 months ago, I was doing deep research on one of the people that was going to be on the show, and up comes this quote, and I look at it, and the source is Beyond the Chutes.show, which is our website.
Right.
So we've become kind of a, hopefully, kind of a historical archive.
a historical archive for rodeo. Tell me about, I know what Beyond the Chutes is all about, but my listeners may not. And even though I mention you at the end of every podcast, because I like your stories. So what is Beyond the Chutes?
Well, it's Beyond the Chutes, in just a few words, is long form interviews. 90% of what we do, my co-host and I, Sam Swearingen, rodeo cowboy out of upstate New York, I've been my friend for 30 years. And when we started the podcast, we knew we wanted to talk about rodeo history.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know exactly, we didn't have much more of that in mind. And there was a Facebook group page that had been put up called the New York State Rodeo Museum Facebook group page.
Okay.
Had been stood up, and it was about cowboys and cowgirls and things that would have, pictures and discussions of folks that had rodeoed back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And a lot of these folks I knew from announcing and being involved in rodeo for 20 plus years. So I said to Sam, we want to start to record with these folks.
Right.
First off, I was comfortable with them.
Yep.
Which always helps, right? Meeting somebody brand new and trying to interview is very different than sitting down and having a cup of coffee with somebody and having a conversation and recording it while you're doing that. So Sam and I, we got real focused on the Northeast, had a bunch of great interviews up there, and it was probably a year into the process. What happens in the Northeast is, if you're going to rodeo in the Northeast, you're typically going to have 3 cards.
Right.
In the Northeast, you're going to ride probably the PRCA,
mm-hmm.
which allows you to qualify for circuit finals. You're probably going to have an IPRA card, and that's going to qualify you for the IFR.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the APRA up there, the American Professional Rodeo Association, all great associations. And that will allow you to campaign during the year. All these allow you and then to campaign during the year under these individual cards, and then to be able to qualify for their finals. And they all have great, great, great finals.
Right.
And September, I would say, of 23, we really kind of turned our focus towards the IPRA pretty hard. I had been up, Sam and I had gone up to Quebec, Canada, and had recorded at the great Western Festival up there of St. Tite, which is up above Three Rivers. 56 or 57 years they've been doing it.
And that is the Festival de St. Tite.
And that's the Western Festival de St. Tite. You're exactly right. And it's IPRA.
So for RVers who may not know what the abbreviation IPRA means, it is the International Professional Rodeo Association. And Doug mentioned the PRCA, which is the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. And you actually defined APRA.
APRA. So, and at that point, I remember I was flying home and I'm thinking, we need to go down the road just a little bit tighter on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I had interviewed Dale Yerrigan, who's the president of the International Professional Rodeo Association, on the show.
Yes.
And if I point you at only 1 or 2 episodes to listen to, there's one that he talks about leaving the horses behind. One of the earlier, I can't even tell you what number it is, but just a wonderful storyteller. And that's the cool thing about what we do. It's very little in our shows. It's very little about me. Very seldom will you hear me talk much about my stuff in them. It's about the guests and about recording these stories and about getting their voices on tape. And we've just traveled so far afield with this. We've been to Texas and so forth. So which brings us back to the whole BTC bus and the whole RV life.
Right. So Beyond the Chutes is a storytelling podcast of rodeo cowboys and cowgirls of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and some even
We will
today.
do current events. We will do, I mean, we go up and record it at the festival in St. Tite, like we said, and we'll talk to cowboys and cowgirls that are competing. We'll be in April, we'll be in Lexington at the American qualifier for the regional qualifier for the American finals, which will be in the big American, which will be in Arlington, Texas.
But so it's, if you're thinking about doing something like this,
Yeah.
know going in, it's an awfully lot of work.
It is.
To say the least.
Yeah, it is. And you better believe in the cause.
Right.
You better have a purpose.
Yes.
And ours is preserving the cowboy life, the cowboy stories. These stories matter, we say. These stories are important.
These stories are important. And my goal in what I'm doing is to educate fellow RVers. And you have a series of podcasts called Quiet Enough to Ride.
Yeah.
And what the big thing about the RV life, and we're going to record a podcast this weekend about this, Doug.
Okay.
Okay. The biggest thing about the RV lifestyle is things happen, things break, things leak. But just like Quiet Enough to Ride, you have to have the right mindset when the proverbial stuff happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll talk about that this weekend.
Yeah.
And you've almost got to be able to laugh at yourself sometimes.
You do. Can't take yourself too seriously.
No,
I agree with that.
no. But so I will tell stories. I'll talk about fishing trips, but I want to educate you on the good, the bad, and the ugly of the RV lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's, for me, you probably won't see too many Instagram filtered photos. You'll see a Mount Vesuvius eruption at Mountain Cove campground in Chickamauga, Georgia, because it's those stories that matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's you and I both have the same mindset.
It's the memories, right?
Right.
It's all the memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we don't record them, who's going to?
That's it.
Yeah. And that's part of it. That's probably the number one reason. And a byproduct of it, probably as important as doing the shows, are the people that the numbers of people that I meet. And boy, you sit down and they tell you their story and their ups and their downs and their wins and their losses. And you got a pretty good idea who this person's about. And they got a pretty good idea who you are.
Yes.
Because you've been able to have a pretty cool conversation together.
Exactly.
And I think in the world today, we need a lot more of that. More people talking to each other instead of about each other, maybe.
Right.
I don't know. It's just, yeah.
I feel like we need to, I'm a Pearl Harbor history buff. And do I wish and I was friends with Luke Hunter, last surviving USS Arizona. Do I wish I had sat down and recorded his memories? Thankfully, somebody did, but we've got to preserve the stories of the Marilyn Duplessis, the Ronnie Williams, the Dale Yerrigans, the Phil Brooms,
Glenn Bird.
Oh
my goodness, Glenn Bird.
Kelly Clark.
Yeah.
You've done a bunch with Kelly.
Yeah. But he's a great historian, great cowboy and a great historian. My goodness.
Yes. Let's go ahead and close this out, Doug.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Wandering Gypsy RV Life podcast. My guest, Doug Simcox. Doug, where can they find you on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, RSS?
On all those places. Beyond the Chutes .show is our website. We're Beyond the Chutes on YouTube. Beyond the Chutes, we've got a Beyond the Chutes Facebook page. We put up a lot of reels, a lot of really cool reels, I think. Come check us out, follow us. Always subscribe.
Right.
Always subscribe. We've been putting out here for the last 6 weeks. We've been putting out 2 shows a week.
Wow.
And talk a little bit about that, our production. So we'll go on these trips. We'll go to Texas. We'll go to Mountain Cove. We'll go to St. Tite. We'll go to King Brothers Rodeo Reunion. I go to the International Finals Rodeo. We went to the First Frontier Circuit Finals Rodeo in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in January, and we'll get a bunch of content. And the way we do our programming, the way we think through our programming is, if it's current, it's happening now, I want to get that up into the world as quickly as possible. For example, we went to St. Tite and recorded with Dale Yerrigan. We do that every year. We're up there, the general manager of the IPRA, and he kind of gives us the state of the union of the IPRA. Numbers of rodeo sanctions, number of members, number of prize money, whatever it may be. Well, you don't want to hear about that in January when he was talking about those things in September.
Right.
Because he also talks about upcoming events and changes they're making and rule changes and stuff they're going to see. So that will jump the line.
Right.
Okay. So if it's current, we will jump the line. So I came out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania with a ton of content, stuff I wanted to get up, all current, all stuff that was happening, all the interviews that we did. And we got to talk at some point about how we luck into some interviews.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But
you lucked into a big one.
Well, we did. And that's one of those, that's totally Sam, right? That's totally Sam that made that happen. There's that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And
yes.
More importantly, who knows you. In this case, who knew Sam.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We're standing in line, get a milkshake at Harrisburg, and Sam starts talk to Tom Glaus, who we had met back in the rodeo days, right? When he was riding. Well, Tom Glaus is the current CEO and president of the PRCA.
Right.
And we share a milkshake.
Yes.
And we somehow the podcast come up. We're talking a little bit, and we go to leave, and Sam says, and you ought to be on the show, Tom. And he said, when? Sam said, tomorrow morning. And he said, okay. So you kind of luck into some of these, and it was a great show. And,
right.
And, great to meet people like that. That's what I said. One of the big benefits of doing this is all the folks that we're meeting. Where was I? So we came back out of Harrisburg with all this content and said, I need to put it up. So I actually sat down, put a plan together.
Yes.
Programming plan.
Right.
And have been releasing two shows a week.
Okay.
And have just now, I'm kind of wrapping up some of that material. I got some video I'm working on. I interviewed queens and queen judges, those that were judging the queen contest. I interviewed queens interviewing cowboys in the equine arena. We just had a blast with it. I'm still working through that material, that content. We're going to get that up as well. And then I've got stuff stacked up from September. Great shows that we sat down with. Matter of fact, this week, the show with Phil Broom.
Yes.
That came out, the bareback rider out of Georgia. That was recorded Labor Day weekend down in Mountain Cove.
Yes. Yes.
So, I want to. The good thing is we got a lot of content. The other thing is there's a lot that we need to get worked through.
So for me, I'm obviously, I don't have as much canned, content that you've gotten put into the quote can.
Right.
So, But you are absolutely correct about it's not what you know at times, it's who you know. Um, I've cold reached out to Chick Wilfong and Garrett Yerrigan and to talk about the crossover between the RV life and rodeo and going up and down the road in horse trailers and all of that. And if you get a chance, listen to both of those, and you can watch both of them on YouTube. Good content about RVing in the rodeo world.
And it totally crosses over. And that's really some of our earlier stuff that we've done together, and definitely a theme we're going to stay on.
Yes.
They're hauling horses up and down the road as opposed to beds and kitchen tables.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, some of these big long trailers with living quarters in them these days, pretty fancy rigs. And that episode you did with Garrett, I really, really enjoyed that. And he's living the life in one of those horse trailers with living quarters, which is a blend of an RV and a trailer, right?
And a horse trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Doug, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Before we wrap this one up, I want to give you a heads up on something we've been building behind the scenes. Doug and I have teamed up on a new series called Cowboys and Cowgirls Rolling Smooth. And this one runs straight down the same road we've been talking about today. Because whether you're in a motorhome, a toter home, or hauling horses in a living quarters trailer, it's the same road, same bumps, same breakdowns, just different rigs. This series is built for the rodeo road. Real stories from folks living it. Real stories from miles most people never see. And real solutions when things don't go the way you planned. You'll find it over on Beyond the Chutes. And if you've ever chased a horizon, hauled a dream, or fixed something on the side of the road, this one's for you. There's a thread that runs through everything Doug and I talked about, and it's this. Tools will change. Technology will evolve. AI will keep getting smarter. But the story, that still belongs to the person who lived it. Whether it's rodeo roads, RV miles, or the lessons learned somewhere in between, the value isn't in how polished it sounds. It's in how real it feels. Use the tools. Let them help you move faster, cleaner, and maybe even a little smarter. But don't hand over the wheel, because at the end of the day, people don't connect with perfect. They connect with honest. And that's what both of us are trying to preserve, one story at a time. Thank you for riding along with me today for this episode of the Wandering Gypsy RV Life Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast with a fellow traveler so more folks can find us out here on the road. You can find more stories, photos, and adventures over at wanderinggypsyrvlife.com. If you're looking for gear that helps keep your rig running right, check out Techno RV through my affiliate link at technorv.com. They really do help you adventure more and worry less. And if you enjoy cowboy storytelling and rodeo history, my good friend Doug Simcox hosts a great podcast called Beyond the Chutes, which is well worth a listen at beyondthechutes.show. If you'd like to dive deeper into the mindset behind this lifestyle, you can check out the Rolling Smooth RV book series at wanderinggypsyrvlife.com/rolling smooth. Until next time, keep your rig rolling smooth, keep your coffee hot, and remember, sometimes the best repair isn't just the one that fixes your RV. It's the one that quiets your mind. Safe travels, my friends. And remember, not all who wander are lost.